I wish to talk about the importance of commemorating Srebrenica in the UK, as well as for the rest of Europe. I hope that what I say will complement the papers by Samuel, who will be talking about creating educational programs to contribute to lasting memory, and Jonathan, who will be talking about construction of memory. Genocide is one of the worst crimes known to humankind. And for Srebrenica to happen right here in civilized Europe, when the world had said never again after the Holocaust, was a horrific reminder of the Nazi ideology. The ideology that says to create a national community only with a particular race, only for a particular race, and those who don't belong to that race, those who don't belong to that ethnic group, to that religious group, should be eliminated. And with planning and propaganda, the ability of leaders to convince people to go along with this ideology, whereby neighbors are murdered and eliminated in a systematic and planned way, simply because they belong to the wrong ethnic or religious group. So horrifying is the reality of Srebrenica that it becomes critical for us to remember, not only to honor the victims, but to learn from the survivors and understand what human beings are capable of, understand the consequences of hatred. And those who don't remember the past are condemned to repeat it again. It's not enough, in my view, to curse the darkness of the past, but to eliminate the future by doing more in our own lives when we confront injustice or hatred, so that we leave the world a better place for the future generations. I grew up with the harrowing scenes of the war in Bosnia on our television screens. I will never forget the Omarska concentration camp, ethnic cleansing, the systematic mass rape and genocide were all happening in Europe. These were the darkest moments in our lifetime. For me, Bosnia was a horrific reminder of the vulnerability of ordinary people. And it made me question two things. Firstly, if the xenophobic claims of ethnic superiority could prevail amongst white indigenous people who are assimilated, who are integrated, and have lived together for hundreds of years, what chance do ethnic minority communities have in the UK or the rest of Europe? You hear politicians across the rest of Europe saying that the ethnic minorities who have arrived in their countries must integrate. The question here is integration enough? Because you couldn't get a better integrated and assimilated society than Bosnia-Herzegovina. This is a question for all European countries with increasing diversity in their population, particularly with the ease of travel and the movement of people across the world. This is the question that each European country has to answer. Secondly, for me, it was the question that I asked, that how is it that this could happen? And I'm sure I wasn't the only one. And if this could happen on our doorstep, then could it happen in my own home country? Would they come after me and my family because I happen to be a Muslim? The ethnic cleansing policy in Bosnia was pursued not solely but primarily at the Muslim population. So let me quote from the ICTY findings from the cases. What the ICTY says is that during their mistreatment, detention, and up to the moment of their murder, these men were cursed, they were mocked, and beaten for their affiliation to the Islamic faith. Some were forced to sing Serb songs or sing the pro-Serb slogans immediately before their death. Another quote from the plea of guilty to the court, Dragan Obrenović, who said that we lost ourselves in hatred and brutality. And the latest case is Tolime, that was confirmed on appeal. The court said that the accused encouraged the use of derogatory terms, thereby provoking ethnic hatred among members of the Bosnian Serb forces and sending out a message that Bosnian Muslims were human beings of a lesser value. Another quote from Biljana Plasic, the former leader of the Republika Srpska, who is indicted for war crimes. And Plasic stated that she and other Serbian nationalists were unable to negotiate with the Bosnian Muslims due to genetics. And I quote, what she said was that it was genetically deformed material that embraced Islam. And now, of course, with each successive generation, it simply becomes concentrated. It gets worse and worse. It simply expresses itself and dictates their style of thinking, which is rooted in their genes. And through the centuries, the genes degrades further. Now, this kind of eugenic ideology of equating a specific ethnic group with a disease or illness, or their dehumanization, is how the Nazis identified the Jews. For me, Srebrenica has lessons for our troubled Europe and the rest of the world. Europe today is witnessing a major crisis concerning its Muslim communities. Europeans feel under siege. Wherever they look, they are confronted with appalling stories of hate violence associated with extremist Muslims. The Charlie Hebdo killings in Paris, followed by the attacks in Copenhagen. Extremists assaulting members of the Jewish community in schools, museums, and even supermarkets. But in turn, Muslims also feel under siege. Right-wing parties have grown dramatically with a negative focus on Muslims and contest most Muslim-related issues, whether it's the issue of halal food, whether it is an issue of building a mosque. Across Europe, right-wing racist organizations have turned their focus away from black issues of racism, Jewish issues in terms of anti-Semitism, and their pure and sole focus right now are Muslims and Islam. If you look at Pegida, if you look at Red Wilders in Holland, if you look at English Defence League in the UK. If you look at Marine Le Pen, and I understand that her dad now, her father, Jean-Marie Le Pen, has disowned her. But all these organizations and their focus are Muslims and Islam. And as a result of that, you see the influence that is had and having through the media on the wider population in Europe. Women in hijabs are abused, and mosques have been frequently attacked across Europe. Let's not forget the Muslim students' murder in Chapel Hill. Let's not forget the daily abuse and attacks in the United Kingdom where Muslims face. Srebrenica has so much to teach the world society about the impact of hatred. And to quote Professor Waqar Azmi, he says that the Bosnians, in other words, the Bosniaks, are exemplary European Muslims, living up to the standards of his higher values like human rights, democracy, and an intellectual tradition in the modern age. The fact that Bosnian Muslims, despite the genocide against them, sought justice instead of revenge, and were able to cope and retain their pluralist and open attitude by relying on compassion, knowledge, and inclusion, should serve as an example for both Europe and the Muslim world. And that is why it is in the interest, I would argue, of Europe to fulfill its promise to remember. Whilst representatives of European countries attend Srebrenica on 11th of July, Europe's resolution, which was passed in 2009, asking every member state to commemorate 11th July as a Srebrenica Memorial Day, has not been implemented. Europe continues to be shamed. It's shamed because of his role in Bosnia, in Srebrenica, and that shame continues to live on Europe and the United Nations for not commemorating the genocide. Commemorating Srebrenica is crucial because it teaches young people about the impact of hatred. Hatred when left unchecked. This has values for all societies and for Bosnian society. And that is why in the United Kingdom, Remembering Srebrenica, the organization which I'm chairman of, is doing just that with the support of the United Kingdom government, which funds it. And we have three aims. Firstly, to hold National Memorial Day in the United Kingdom. Secondly, to organize lessons from Srebrenica visits to Srebrenica, where we bring regular visits, educational visits. And thirdly, to work with schools to produce education parks to teach children about the consequences of hatred and what happened in Srebrenica. This year is the 20th anniversary, and I'm pleased to say that this year we will be having the national UK's Srebrenica Memorial Day at Westminster Abbey with 2,200 people attending, at the Scottish Parliament as well as the Scottish St. Giles Cathedral, in Welsh Parliament on 8th of July, Scottish Parliament and St. Giles Cathedral on 11th of July, on 10th of July, and also in Northern Ireland. And with that, we also have 100 cities and towns who have agreed to organize Srebrenica Memorial Day in town centers as well as community centers. Our aim is to encourage everyone in our society to learn about the consequences of hate and discrimination. Srebrenica is a powerful example which Europe must and should use to teach its communities about the consequences of hate. There's no doubt that in Britain and Europe we have come a long way on race relations and achieved a lot. However, we must also recognize that there's still a lot to do. Racism, discrimination, and promotion of hatred continues to persist. You know, the Chinese have a saying that, may you live in interesting times. This was a curse. When they wanted to curse someone, they will say, may you live in interesting times. And it seems like we're living in interesting times, because people used to say that if only people can communicate, if only people can talk to each other, there would be no conflict, there would be no hate. People should communicate. We live in a world where advancement in technology, where advancement in terms of the internet, the method of communication, whether it's WhatsApp, whether it's internet, whether it's emails, whether it's Viber, and yet hatred continues to persist. Conflicts continues to persist. So we are living in an interesting world. But we need to understand that we owe it to the victims to learn the lessons of Srebrenica, that the evil of hatred, the evil of racism and bigotry must be confronted if we are to create a better and safer society for all. Memory is what shapes us. Memory is what teaches us. Thank you.